You know, it's rare that a director comes out with two films in a year, let alone two films in the span of a couple months. Kudos to you, Guy Ritchie. So, The Covenant is the new Guy Ritchie film, obviously directed by Guy Ritchie. I was flabbergasted when I saw the trailer for this, knowing that he had his other movie come out a couple months ago, Operation Fortune Rouge de Jour, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So I was very excited about this one. I figured it would have a different tone and a different feel, and it did. This is a little more of a serious drama. Little bits of comedy maybe you can find in there, but it's a serious story starring Jake Gyllenhaal as Sergeant John Kinley, who is a soldier over in Afghanistan. The story takes place in about 2018, I think they said it in, and it's about him and his interpreter, played by Salim, who plays Ahmed, the interpreter there. Essentially, they're going and finding these stockpiles of Taliban weaponry, or like where they're making weapons and stuff, like compounds. They're going around and trying to find those, and Ahmed's the interpreter talking to the indigenous people there about trying to essentially narrow down those locations, and eventually things get bad enough to where Ahmed and Jake Gyllenhaal's character have to go into hiding, and that's kind of where the story takes off. In the trailers, it's structured in a way that makes you think the story is going to be structured a certain way, and in the film, it's not really that. It's not what I was expecting the story to be structured like, which is fine. I thought this film had pretty good pacing up till the third act. I thought that the music in this is fantastic. Guy Ritchie does a real good job at filming the military stuff and presenting the lingo and some of the code names and stuff on the screen for you. So whenever you hear somebody talk about like what is an angel, and they talk about the weaponry or the plane, or I forget exactly now thinking about it, but all that terminology is on the screen for you to understand. So when there's an acronym like IED, all that, it pops up on the screen for you to be like, oh, okay, that's what they're talking about. So they don't slow the story down and have to explain what that means, which I appreciated. So what's interesting here is it is very, very much held together by these two leads, and I thoroughly enjoyed both of them. But the thing here is, as much as I love Jake Gyllenhaal, and Jake Gyllenhaal is probably one of my top 5 actors in Hollywood right now, I have to say that Dar Salim really does outshine Jake in this movie. And it's not because Jake gives a bad performance. It's just I think Jake's character is written in such a way that Ahmed's character is way more interesting than Gyllenhaal's character. Not saying that Jake's character isn't interesting. It's just the way things are kind of structured and the way things go. I found myself really gravitating towards Ahmed a lot more. And Jake's character does get some moments to kind of finally flesh out, but there's not as much to flesh out there as Ahmed's character, which is interesting. Because Ahmed doesn't get a whole lot of dialogue in the film, which is also why I dug it, because there are times in this film where Ahmed wants to say something to Sergeant Kinley, but you could tell he's holding back, whether it be, because he's not sure, they haven't really built up that trust yet, or because they're at that point, but he just doesn't want to, I don't know, put them in an emotionally vulnerable situation, especially in situations they find themselves in. I thought that was a very good way to go about those scenes, is just having him sit there and watch Jake Gyllenhaal, but then you could tell as much as he wants to say something, he's holding it back, but you know exactly what he wants to say, and you know exactly how he's feeling, and I think that was some great stuff there. Other people might not dig that approach like I did, which is fine. I think that this film had, like I said earlier, had that great pacing, but it does kind of towards the end start to slow down, and I really could feel it at a certain point where I started to yawn a little bit. I was like, man, I get we still got some of this mission left to go, but man, can we get to it? I do feel like it does meander at a couple points. It's definitely not as tight as I would think a Guy Ritchie film would be, but in this type of film, it's understandable where they're letting it breathe, and I get that 100%, but there's times where I feel like the parts where they did find to help the story breathe a little bit, to kind of take a break from the tension that is just rampant throughout this film. I just wish, like, okay, we've had our breath of fresh air. Now let's get back into it because we got so much more to get to. And, definitely not as well directed, in my opinion, as his last film. But I think Guy Ritchie, it's interesting the way he picks his projects. And, you'll go from seeing a typically stylistic Guy Ritchie movie to something like this, though. I would not have guessed that Guy Ritchie would have done this movie. Just like when he did Aladdin, I would not have guessed that he made Aladdin. But Guy Ritchie, is quickly... I mean, he's always kind of been a top-tier director for me. Maybe not all of his stuff hits. But lately, I've just been really drawn to the Guy Ritchie stuff. And he does a lot of different and interesting, diverse stuff, which makes him a very versatile director. And I appreciate the heck out of that. At the end of the day, I'm going to give this film a solid B. I wanted to go a little higher, but, between the pacing, the story is pretty... it doesn't really go into a whole lot of places that make it, go too far in depth. It is a pretty standard kind of... not a rescue story per se. It does get to that point, but it's, if you've seen some of these other military films, like, I've never seen Lone Survivor. I went with my brother-in-law, and he was kind of comparing this to Lone Survivor a little bit. So I don't know how accurate that statement is. I'm sure people will let me know down in the comments. But I'm not going to say all these military type movies all feel the same, but I have noticed in some of the ones I've seen, I just don't really get too invested in some of these ones, especially that are more revolved around the war in the Middle East that the United States has gotten into. Not to get into politics or nothing, but I just don't find myself as compelled to the more recent stuff. It is interesting, like, maybe the further back we go, I do find that stuff a little more interesting. Maybe it's because I'm not living in that time frame, and I have to hear about it every day. Maybe that's why. But regardless, I do think this is a good time at the theater, and what a heck of a weekend, couple weeks we've had where I think they're we're starting to get a lot of good, solid films out there. Maybe nothing that's going to jump over the top, but this is one that you're going to see, and you're going to at least come out going, I quite enjoyed that. And, I'm very proud. I'm very happy to say that this is another one of those. So what do you guys think? Do you have any interest in seeing Guy Ritchie's The Covenant or not? Let me know down in the comments below. What's your favorite Guy Ritchie movie? I also want to know that. I definitely got a few on that list. But, yeah, so anyway, guys, if you could also please hit that like, hit that subscribe, and the bell notification to be notified whenever I drop new videos. It'd be greatly appreciated. Tell all your friends about this channel. Also greatly appreciated. So, yeah, until next time, guys, and I don't even know what we got coming out next, but when we do know, I'll do a review for it, and I'll be seeing you then.